is true, I was in a gallery position for 23 years up in Gympie. I know it was a long time, but that experience of dealing with artists and artwork from all sorts of mediums has helped me understand a lot more in my own practice. And it was touched on by Joe before we go on. I do live on Gubbi territory, but northern Gubbi where Gympie is, and I was raised in Bachelor territory. Even though in the days when I was raised there, we never referred to it, there was no truth telling, and there was no acknowledgement of anything. So you just did, that's what you did. So I'm going to take you through here. My work that nobody has submitted yet is on the left as we walk through the corridor. I will go into probably a little bit more detail on this as we go around, but this is, I've titled this Walking in Time. And I realise around me today I have people who are connected to my life as either artists, paper-making artists, walking buddies, artists I've dealt with in the Gympie Gallery, and it's very nice to have this combination of my interests around me today to be able to talk. It's nice to have your support. So, walking in time, walking being one of the bigger things here, and time being another, and connect the two. I do work predominantly these days in my own botanical links that I make from the trees on my property, and I will go through that at the end of my talk. This, as Joe said, I work with being part of the solution rather than the problem. And I have told my children that when I die, they can compost my work if they don't need it.
I thought you were going to say compost you.
Yes. They can do that, yes, too. So I have, this is where I've led to my house and my studio are full, as my partner around here will attest to. I do have a lot of things, but I've come to the realisation that I can't stand acrylics. I don't know if anybody else around here can agree with me in that. You agree? So if you're an acrylic painter, I'm very, very sorry if I offend you. I just can't, in my mind, see all those little plastic beads heading off in rivers and oceans. And working in a gallery for that long, also, I had a lot of people who would come in and say, my auntie has died, my mother has died, I've got all this artwork and I've got all these art materials, what can I do with them? Well, some people can just paint 10 paintings a week in acrylic on a cheap canvas, and to me that's rare as a penny. And then they die and someone's got to get rid of them. And they think the gallery's the answer. Do you get that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I go, not my problem. So thinking of my own practice, it is my problem. I'm the one who's got to think about where my art is going after I die, and so this is why I work with natural materials and paper, because paper can decompose. I'm also a paper maker, as Joanna over here can attest to as well. I've been a paper maker for 35, 40 years, and I don't work with my own handmade paper with my drawing because I use masking fluid, and masking fluid, the paper would not stand up to the rigours of what I need to do to get to this point. One day maybe, but not just yet. And my handmade paper is made, again, working on this natural, back to basics, or what do you say, first, whatever it is. Most of my handmade paper is made from natural fibres, and the natural fibres grow on my property. I have, as I said, 5 acres, so I use lots of lemongrass. Got to think now what I've got. What have I got? Lots of philodendron, banana, sisal, papyrus, And papyrus I got from a well-known papermaker, Kathy Nix, her dam before she sold her house on the coast, and it came with its own deadly little weapon called salvia. So then my dam was covered in salvia and took me weeks or months to get rid of it. Hopefully I've done that now. But this is based on roughly my walk of the Cooloola Great Walk. Has anyone walked to that track here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, great. So you understand the awe that comes from walking past these huge cowries or huge trees within this, especially on coming from Rainbow Beach End, from Lake Poona to the first Cowrie Walkers Camp, it's called, I think, and then after that to the second one. They are just majestic and they impressed me so much, with so much awe. I want to go back, I want to do a lot more in that area, which I intend to do soon. So this is based on the Cooloola Great Walk. It is, as I said, walking in time. This is placed like right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Do you see what I mean? So I'm walking through the forest, but the time part of it is to do with the age of the trees. The time, there's a lot of history goes into this area. A lot of history has happened since colonial residents in the area. We've lost so many of these large, beautiful trees, and they take a long time to regrow. So when you come across these in nature, they are just stunning. So that's the basis of this. So I might come around here where you can all sit down now. Okay. I'm not quite sure where I was going to go today. I was going to lead you through Kevin's idea was about place, about face. There's a lot to do about place, but also about face, meaning that the work is mirroring our life or our work. So about place, I guess I come from, as I said, Bachelor Country, Hervey Bay. I'm a parochial girl. I don't mind being parochial either. I think it's good to love your own environment and where you live and the small townness of that. I come from a family of 5 girls. I'm the second oldest. We were tomboys rather than girls. And we lived in Hervey Bay until I was 10, and then we moved to Darwin on a RAF base for 4 years, and then back to Hervey Bay. And then life changed after that when I left school. But being out in nature was always something our family did. And I have to thank my mother and my father for 2 things they did. Sometimes they weren't good and sometimes they weren't. My father had a very adventurous spirit. He just walked around short scones and a short sleeve t-shirt, not t-shirt, shirt, everywhere, just like I don't know, he was just a mocker, he was a bit of a lad, a bit of a larrikin. But when we were in the Northern Territory, every weekend, and I'm not sure whether this is because 5 girls always wanted a boy, 5 girls had tried to get rid of them, and the mother were taking us every weekend practically down the track, which is the highway, and he would find obscure places to take us to. He'd get us bogged in, we'd have to get out of, get lost, cross flooded rivers, wherever there was a sense of adventure. I think he turned us into tomboys, but that was what I liked and took away from my father. My mother had a love of nature herself. She used to always go off walking. As soon as we pulled up beside a billabong or a creek or whatever, she would go off walking and investigate. So the part of her, which I thought was okay at the time, but now I realise isn't okay, is she collected lots of things and took them home with her, especially from national parks. So now I know that's not the dumb thing to do. But even when they travelled around Australia in a caravan, her ex-husband 3 times, she had drawers under the beds that were full of rocks, shells, all sorts of things that she had pillaged. If you see my studio, it's a little bit of an imitation of that. So we always, even I was a girl guide, a brownie and a girl guide. My mother was a guide leader. So I say I was a good girl guide. I know that might sound strange. But that really gave me an appreciation of being out in nature. I learned to survive. I learned to do all sorts of things out in the bush, and they were the parts I loved the most, when you know, disappeared off and followed tracks and whatever. So that has probably stayed with me. So that's what I'm a good girl guide. And then I lost all that for a while I travelled, and then I lived in New Zealand for 3 years in Dunedin, where I did my fine art degree, and then went to worked on play school in Dunedin, and then went to England, and then back to Auckland on in between Root Island, and there's a place to go to. So my artwork took a back seat, and eventually I met Lindsay in Auckland, and we have 2 children now, and he's given up his life in New Zealand to be with me in Australia. And we live in Gympie on 5 acres, so I've been a lot of places, done a few things, so I can't remember where I was going with that.
Giving us a background.
Yes, that was my background as to where I am now. So when I left full-time paid employment, which is another word for that big R word, which I refuse to say, I got into walking and hiking. So it wasn't that long ago, as Katie will know, and it has taken on a bigger meaning in my life. The fact that I now have time to walk and walk amongst nature and investigate all these new places that I'm discovering in our region. Along with that came discovery of Wallam. And if you know what the Wallam is, you should know if you live around here, it's that area of low heathland that grows in low nutrient soil, and once upon a time went from sort of northern New South Wales right up to past Bundaberg Way, and it was really quite a rich area. It's slow, and this is through Dr. Sue Davis that I have come to really appreciate what Wallam and wildflowers are in this area. And because of the demand on space through our lifestyle, we are losing that Wallam. So much so that even around here, you've got Kathleen MacArthur Park just up the road. It's a bit like a zoo, you know, it's fenced off all the way around, and I have this feeling that this is what's going to happen to our Wallam environments in the future, and it already has. I think Bundaberg, we have another one. They're coming down to just little spots. We're going to lose it. So it's a bit similar to the trees. I moved on from wildflowers into trees because I have another exhibition coming up at the end of next year, which started off of Trees Would Talk and is now called Whisper in the Leaves, and it coincides with what Kevin was doing here in his exhibition. And I thank Kevin for, I'll just get into that a little bit there, thank Kevin for selecting me to be part of this exhibition. I feel honoured. I have known Kevin for, I don't know, 26 years or something. He was my mentor when I started in the Gympie Gallery, and we've stayed friends ever since. So for him to invite me into this, he obviously saw my artwork as contributing something to what he had to say, which comes back to the trees, I guess. Anyway, told you my background, where I've been, what I've done. Going to art college, doing my masters while I was working full time. Now that was a stressful time, as you can imagine, doing full-time study while you're working full-time, having to travel to Brisbane and back for 1 day a week. There's a few people around here nodding because obviously they've been through the same process. But during that time there, I started or pushed the masking fluid, which is used in my work around here, the method of my work further, and that's where my flood series started. Now, when I lived in Brisbane, before I came to Gympie, I wasn't into landscape. I was in, a city environment. People was where I was at, and paper making, basically, and basket making. I was not into drawing landscapes or dealing with landscapes. I didn't think they were worth it. I moved to Gympie, and what do I do these days? Nothing else but works based on land and landscapes and whatever, the environment. That move made me, because parochial as I am, coming from Harley Bay and the Mary River, going through Gympie and ending up in Maryborough. I was actually born in Maryborough, that's where the only hospital was in those days. These days the hospital's in Harley Bay and not in Maryborough. But the Mary River comes out there. So I took an interest in my own surroundings. It just went deeper and deeper. I had photos to hand around here, but I forgot all about them. So my love, it's a bit hard to...
take them out.
Yeah. So I started off with my early days and going through. So the love of my own environment and being parochial took more of a centre stage. I was a sister of Mary. If you know the Mary River Dam proposal that came up for the Traveston crossing, I was one of these nuns dressed in green nun's outfit who turned up at every media event and protested against that. So I guess that started a bit of my advocating for my own environment and what I thought was special. I haven't got into the on the ground advocating for the Coolah National Park, which is under threat you could say, of having cabins built on it. But secretly, I guess through my artwork, I am advocating for the beauty of that area that I don't particularly want to see lost. So moving to Gympie moved my practice into areas of the environment, and it's been quite a fruitful and rewarding experience. I find I'm enjoying that so much more than people. In actual fact, my artwork doesn't deal with the human condition at all, because I think we as humans think we're the most intelligent and can handle that. We're dealing with it. There's lots of people out there dealing with the human condition, but not me. I think our environment, our nature around us needs our help more than humans, because in the long run it's going to outlast us, hopefully. Hopefully, if we don't destroy it. So, while working on my tree exhibition, and then Kevin's come into that, I've done a lot of reading and researching on trees, and my interest has been of a strong interest, almost like drawn to, like it's a magnet, to the araucarias, which is the bunga tree, the hoop pine, and there's a few araucarias out there, but in our area that's the basic two. The kauri isn't an araucaria, but it's stepped in there as an important tree, and the Wallamine pine was thought to be an araucaria, but it's not. And that's the most ancient of trees I can think about. I actually wrote to the National Parks and Wildlife of New South Wales to see if I could do an artist in residency in the Wallamine National Park with the Wallamine, and they just said, definitely not. Scientists are not even allowed there.
You need to go to the big sea.
Well, they directed me to all of the botanical gardens around that have, and I did visit the Sydney Botanical Gardens, the Mount Annan Botanical Gardens outside of Sydney. There's supposedly some growing in the Brisbane Roma Street Gardens and in South Bank, one or two. I haven't counted those two yet, but I remember going to the Sydney Botanical Gardens and picking up leaves off the ground and did a lot of research there. So I had this fascination, which comes with walking in time, back to my title, with the ancient, and how that ancient can still exist today in its forms very similar. Like the Wallamine is apparently still the same plant that was there, what is it, more than 60,000 years ago, more than that. And how, so I read all these books about trees, heaps of books. I can't remember, I had piles of them there at one stage. And then I went into this area, the Coolah National Park area, and the Gympie history, and all of their history of trees. Their forestry people, I spoke to forestry people, I would research different things, so much so that my brain exploded. Do you know when you get too much information and you want to get into it, you go down another rabbit hole and you can't retain this, but the interest was there. I just wanted to learn more about the trees of our area. And it's a sad, sad state, I guess, when you go back. And they knew no better at the time. You know, I can't really accuse them of chopping all the trees down. I wish I could. But it was what they did at the time to survive and live. And that's how it went. Our agricultural history took over. People wanted to live everywhere, even in the wildlife and kinkin areas where my area is. You know, banana plantations took over in the 20s, 30s. There was a big boom in that, and that didn't work, and then they moved on to something else. But to do all that, they knocked down the trees all around to create experiments that possibly didn't work. And there's a great history of that. You can see that when you walk through places like the Doggerel Forest. Has anyone walked through the Doggerel Forest in Kinkin? What? What?
Oh yes, I have. Sorry. I just didn't know it was called that.
It's a very small walk. It's only about a kilometre walk, or a kilometre and a half. And it's coming from Kinkin, heading back, well, I don't know, you have to look it up. And Lindsay came with me the day I went there. There's a photo going around of me hugging a tree.
Yes, it's a great one.
That is in the Doggerel Forest.
Wow.
That is a carrot. Probably one of them they left because it was too hard to get out at the time or something like that, I don't know. But when you go through that Doggerel Forest, yes, beautiful, isn't it? There are some large blackbucks, messmates are big. Take the time and do that 1.5 K walk to visit it, because you can tell by looking at that forest what it looked like once upon a time. And in there you will also witness the evidence of the tree choppers, because there's at least one large tree, probably about so round, and you can see on the side of it, as you can through a lot of the walks we go on, you'll see that the woodworkers have put their planks in to start chopping, and that's evidence all around this area. I'd like to play around with that image at some stage of the trees being chopped down. So, going back, I get wandered off into rabbit holes. So, as you probably noticed, I don't have a scientific background. I can't remember scientific names, not even wildflowers, although Sue Davis said the best way to do that is learn 3 a day. I've tried. Doesn't work. But trees don't know what they're called. They don't know that they're a poop pine or a bunya or whatever. They're just trees doing their thing. So I don't feel so bad that I can't remember their names either. But I have lots of friends who do know their names that can only speak in Latin. Oh, that's a such and such a tree. A what? Yes. But I have an ambition for the rest of my life that I have of trying to find out what the trees are that I walk past when I go on my walks. I'm getting there slowly. Every walk I practically get to know another tree or another flower. It's a slow process, it doesn't come naturally to me. So I'm glad that I have friends who are experienced in these areas. So when I thought about this exhibition, I was doing this other research, and I came across a philosopher called Edward S. Casey. Has anybody else read his work? Casey? Casey writes, and I'm sure Kevin would have come across it while doing his research as well. He writes about place, space and place as 2 different things. Space is a physical thing, but place isn't. And there's a couple of things I've written down lots, but I read through my work, so I was like, okay, this is a thing I'd like to read out that links into Kevin's exhibition. The body bears the traces of the places it has known. These traces are continually laid down in the body, sedimenting themselves there and thus becoming informative of its specific somatography. A body is shaped by the places it has come to know and what have come to it. So we all come with our own sense of self, which, when you read this, is imprinted on us in different ways. We all come with our own opinions because of where we've been and what we've done and what we've achieved in life. So looking at my work, you might have a different feel about it to what I have, having been in that place. Or you might have different cultural background, which you will read that differently. And Elizabeth Rose says that the reverse is also true. Places are themselves altered by our having been in them. And that's what has happened. Maybe not my presence. I don't know if my presence walking through a track has affected the trees. And that's when I come to these little things about, it's like a child asking a question. Does a tree breathe the same as us? Does it not? Right? You think about putting yourself into the body of a tree. How does it know if we're there? Is it smelling, sensing, feeling the same things we are? The air, the wind blowing by, all of those things that we take as sensations. What does the tree feel and do? And I don't think we will ever know the answer because we're not a tree. But we like to put our own human conditions on these things. So there was another one. Places come to us lastingly, once having been in a particular place for any considerable time, or even briefly, if our experience there has been intense. We are forever marked by that place, which lingers in us definitely and in 1,000 ways, many too subtle for us to name. How it felt to be in this presence. Proust points out that the essence of a place can be compressed into a single sensation, which being reawakened can bring the place back to us in its full vivacity. An impression of place. Can you get that, what I'm trying to say there? While you're in this space looking at being more inspired by these large trees, there might be a million things going through your mind, but weeks later you might just remember a snippet of that, which is a condensed version, so to speak, of what you went through. I guess that's what is there. Held virtually in the body and ready to be revisited when the appropriate impression or sensation arises. Reading through a lot of these philosophers' work, you can get lost. You get lost in the wording and putting it there. But I guess what I was trying to point out there is that is what the feeling of walking through the Kulula Great Walk brought to me, which came out in that work. But there's another reference as well, and I had to read my label out there as well. I forget what I handed in when we're giving statements. What bullshit did I say now? No, I didn't say that. Okay. It's the word harith. And if you read my label out there, you will see it's mentioned there, H-I-R-A-E-T-H. It's a Welsh word. And I guess in the way it links back, I've got Welsh heritage. So it resonated with me. Red hair, Welsh, you reckon? And this is the same, a spiritual longing for a home which maybe never was. Nostalgia for ancient places to which we cannot return. It is the echo of the lost places of our souls past and our grief for them. It is in the wind and the rocks and the waves, and it is nowhere and it is everywhere. I think we all would have a sense of harith for anywhere we have visited in our lives. You go back there now and it's not there. It's changed, it's been developed, waters down, all of those things. I get that sense of harith when I look at the ancient trees and the logs that have been chopped up at this level. I think of the people who've walked across that earth that I have walked across as well, going back, the Indigenous peoples who would have known the Curated National Park like the back of their hand, and they would have seen it when it was in its heyday of huge trees. I just can only think about that and go, wow, what would it have looked like? How they would have known those trees. They probably would have owned some of those trees, like in the Bunya Mountains where the Indigenous people owned certain bunya trees and passed it on to family. It's acknowledging that fact that other people had walked on the same path I was walking on a long time ago, not necessarily for good, because of the timber getters came through as well, and then the farmers and whatever. And now it's in our time, it's contemporary. What can we do about it to not add to that? Which is where my silent protest against cabins and national parks comes into that aspect and how we can help it. So that explains my work. It hasn't explained how I get to my work and what I do. So I can take you through that process, and you would have seen some of the works going around in there. So I've only dwelt on this work, not on my other work. If you know my work, I've been working sometimes quite large in recent years, since I did my Masters and my first 9-metre paper work. I've done 2 of them now, one just recently for the flood exhibition. The first one was floods as well, and this one is the revisit of the largest flood Gympie has seen in well over 100-something years. So I do work quite large quite often. There's another work touring around with Sue Davis and her wildflower exhibition, Wildflower by Design. That's only 4 metres. This one's a small one. So, working with masking fluid. As you heard, I have a background in graphics, paste up and all of that. Masking fluid is something that was used in that trade for me. Watercolour artists use it as well. I buy it this size bottles. Most people buy it. I don't know if I bought the little one. No, I didn't. I tipped that into a smaller bottle to use instead of opening the lid to a large one. It is a rubber solution, so staying sustainable. I think it works for me. You would have seen also photos going around of me taking the masking fluid off my work, and this is what that ends up like. It's a lovely object on its own, a little 3D piece. Instead of using a hand or a rubber, this pulls itself up. It's self-developed. I have quite a few of these now. Don't know what to do with them. So, I have to use a 300-year sandpaper because of the rigour of going through the masking fluid, the inks, the masking fluid, the inks, the masking fluids and the inks. So that's why my own handmade paper may not work in that sense. I boil up my own inks, and here I have 2 barks. I have a variety of barks, and you would have seen another photo go around with a table with a whole lot of ink bottles on it. I was doing an assessment of my ink bottles last year and didn't realise I had that many. But I do favour, I do not touch berries or fruits because they don't have a lasting light fastness. I'm not saying mine has a light fastness as well, but I do test it. And I brought along my book today that you can see. So the inks that I used in the work around the corner, no, since then, another work. This has been out in the weather under a sheet of glass, or brick over a sheet of glass for the last 3 weeks. So I can tell what works and what doesn't. So the inks I use are basically those that have a lot of tannin. Tannin is the basic ingredient in these inks. So I have Gympie mess made on my property, and when 2 of them died, I could use the bark off of that. Now if I need to get any more, And I have Gibbs made here. This is a Gibbs made bark. I can work with the Forestry Museum in Gympie, the Timber Museum. That's a plantation people. They have collected iron bark for me. I was meant to get Gibbs made from them last year and forgot, but I can. But friends also give me some. So that hasn't been made into an ink yet because the inside of the bark is just too beautiful. I can't sacrifice it to the vat. And the other one here is a black wattle. I haven't used this a lot as an ink yet. I have made ink, but I haven't used it. And on the outside of that is a lichen. And that lichen can also be made into an ink and you get a purple. So I haven't used that in my work either, because when I have done various, and you can come up and have a look at these later, I have done various tests with all sorts of inks and the lichen didn't last with strength. So another one of the inks I use, this one is my basic one. Gibbs Mate is the one I use the most. This is a newer one that I've just discovered. It's mistletoe, and this is the leaf of the mistletoe. So obviously,
like a native mistletoe. The
it's a
Australian
native, yeah. On trips out to Wandai, I stop and pick all their mistletoe because it's so close to the ground. There are a variety of mistletoes, but the ones that land on eucalyptus trees, obviously, in my mind, they take on the tannin through the eucalyptus tree. But it gives a beautiful colour. This one here is the mistletoe. It's a lovely, lovely pink. I don't know if I've used it in that one. Another ink is ironbark, as I said. I have ironbark on my property. We chopped down a couple of trees after a hailstorm because it was so close to the house. I have a lot of trees on my property, haven't I? Cheers. Spotty gum with the resin that came from the bottom of a spotty gum tree was another recent acquisition after doing an artist in residence down at Scenic Greenway. Put the glasses back on, Joolie. Another spotty gum, yes mate, and a red Kamala, which isn't the best one over here. Red Kamala is an interesting ink. It's a native tree, which is native to Australia and Southeast Asia, possibly India or whatever. And it has red berries on it, red seed cases with like 3 little black seeds inside. But the interesting part is on the outside of that seed case is a lot of furry little red dust. It's the furry red dust you use. You have to strain and shake it off of the seed pods to get the dust, and then you mix it with an alkali like washing soda, and it gives you yellow. It gives you yellow. So it's a bit of alchemy in a way, and I'm not into a lot of scientific stuff to explain this. I have a son who's a chemical engineer, and I should get him to sit down with me one day and see what some of these things do. But that's where I've used a lot of my highlights, and you'll see that in the work out there, the red Kamala. And sometimes I also darken my ink or paint over it with, this is my iron water. It's very gruesome. It's very gruesome. But it makes a beautiful black. You know, it darkens up the tannins when I work with it. And how I work is, as you saw, first off, it's a 3 drawing process really. I draw straight onto the paper, often quite loosely. Then I come back and draw again with the masking fluid. And again, it's quite loose. Nothing's ever definite or scientifically accurate, because it can't be. And then after I've flowed ink over it, I may do some more masking fluid, and flow some more ink, and maybe some more masking fluid, and more ink as it gets darker. And then I have to go through and take it off. And as I've got older, I've got more anal in my approach. when I look at the 4-metre one I did for the wildflowers, it was really quite loose and had lots of white space. These days, I'm flat out finding the white space in my work. So I have to loosen up again somehow or other and get back out of that, because I just love that whole meditative process of sitting with the work. And I can do it for many, many hours a day. And I'm really, really fortunate that I have a chef in the house who calls out to me, dinner's ready, make me stop working sometimes. So thank you, Lindsay, for being my chef, feeding me. Got to feed the artist. It's not something everybody gets as their living chef. But after I've done all that, taken the masking fluid off, then I come back in to do the anal bit of redrawing again and placing things forward from. And quite often I lose my first drawing, so I don't know where I'm going, so I make it up, as you do. But the tools I use, which are, as a matter of working it out, I used to use brushes. And these are, you can come up and have a look at these when I've finished here. These are some of my brushes that I used to use. It's a good way to ruin a brush. But you can use them like that if you want to. I don't. I've now gone into these silicone things that are used by clay workers. Somebody else uses them as well, some other art form. I can't remember. But for me, they come in a pack with different points on the end. I've practically blunted the points and they keep coming out now. But they are great. But pens, writing pens. It's really hard to find Gibson pens these days. Not many people use them. But I have two. If you look at these, they're so grotty. They're my favourites. If they work, I'll use them. I don't care how grotty they are. Tools work for me, and for drawing as well. So, and sometimes I will splatter I've just recently started splattering the masking fluid, but no great effect with that one. So sometimes I'll have to be very naughty and unsustainable and put bleach over my work, draw with bleach later on. Not something I like to tell people often, and here I'm telling it on a video. So that brings you back to how sustainable is my work. And that's what most people ask me when I sell my work, is how long am I going to keep this work? Well, as I said before, when I die, my family can compost my work if they don't like it. I am not too fussed. Once I die, I don't care. Is that a bit cruel? I'm not into longevity, I came from a background, 23 years in the keeping, preserving, whatever industry, as Joe knows, and you can spend a lot of time and a lot of money preserving and keeping things up into a state. I don't think my artwork is going to fit into that category. So I'm not into conservation so much as, maybe partly, but not a lot. So it doesn't mean that much, which is probably why I work with handmade paper and work on paper. I don't see myself as someone who's going to be up here in the art world and make a name in the end. So if you buy my artwork or you own it, you enjoy it for now, for what it does for you now, the feeling it gives you now. So not what it's going to bring you back after you die. Do you understand that? Yeah? Okay. So thank you, Kalanta Regional Gallery, for giving me this opportunity to talk non-stop in circles.
Has anyone got any questions?
Yes. How do you actually make the ink?
Oh, I left that bit out, didn't I? Oh, that
I
was
was waiting to see that.
okay. I will take, to say messmate, I will take the bark, I will take off the outer bark because that's not needed. It's superfluous. What you're looking for is between the outer bark and the inner bark, there's I've forgotten the name of it.
The layer.
The layer. Is there a botanist in the room?
Cambium.
Cambium. The Cambium layer is what you're looking for in there. my detection. So I take off the outside and then I will break the other part down to as small pieces as I can, and I will fill up almost a 20-litre thing of water with it and cook it for several hours. Let it boil away and cook, and it will get a lot of ink out of it. Sometimes I can double cook it. Then I will strain it down and then I will reduce it. Reducing means not boiling, whatever, it's just cooking it till you get that little fine mist, smoke, steam coming off of the pot, and you leave it cooking like that for as long as it takes you to get to the desired level of colour you need. Sometimes that can be days. So where I start off with a pot like this, I could end up with 1 or 2 bottles like that. And there's a lot of straining going into that because it won't work in my fountain pen nibs because it still retains a bit of gritty material in it. I then will add gum arabic to it. Gum arabic, that helps the flow of the drawing material, and clove oil or another oil that will help preserve. I do that, but it doesn't always work. So sometimes you will take the lid off and you'll have a layer of mould across the top.
So it's just a mould.
Just a mould, I'll just scoop it off, throw it out. But quite often you'll get a lot of sediment will settle in the bottom of your jars. There's a lot of sediment on the bottom of this one, the iron bark. And there's a lot of jars I'm throwing out at home at the moment when I just reassessed my jars. So it will change depending on the season you're collecting it as well, and how old the tree is or whatever the bark is coming from, and I can't tell you what to go for. It's a personal thing, I guess.
How long will one last?
Well,
Once the sediment?
I actually haven't had a lot of failure with length of time so far. It's an ongoing discovery here, an experiment. But if you were using, like I have done avocado seeds and avocado peels, they don't last at all. You start off, you make it, you get this beautiful pinky purple colour, and then it oxidises. As soon as the air gets to it, it changes the colour. Which is why I go through this process before I choose an ink that I'm going to be using in my work. It's really lovely to see things fresh. You go, oh, isn't that great? You take a photo, it's wonderful. Come back an hour later and it's changed colour. Come back a week later. Again, come back a month later and you may have no colour left at all. So it's that whole process, and that's what scares people, I think, with my work and buying my work. But hey, I try.
What's the name? Is there a preservative in it of some sort?
You can put vinegar in it. Vinegar can help you keep the colour bright as well. The preservative is the anti-mould one of clove or evergreen or any of those oils, I guess. And it's only a couple of drops, like in a bottle like this, it would just be 6 drops to 10 drops. Gum arabic, I can't remember how much, I just dolled it in. I'm very...
Until you get to the consistency.
Yeah. And I'm not quite sure even if the gum arabic helps except when I come to the drawing at the end, it doesn't help with the flowing work to start with. I don't know how long I'll be carrying on in this process, or before I go into something else which will catch my fancy or take it further. I'm up for exploring new possibilities and new angles with the whole thing, but this is where I am at this moment. So, anybody else?
You connect so beautifully with your paper making background as well.
Yes.
You know your fibres and...
Yeah, the first principles, that's what it is, going back to first principles. Yes, yes. What else? Anybody else want to ask questions? You want to know anything? But thank you, Curated Gallery, for allowing me this opportunity and to care.
Well, I think that was amazing. We always love hearing I particularly like your work in that the the thing that has the most mass and meaning is the whiter piece. I love that sort of negative, you know, the power of it is quite extraordinary when you think it's the master, like you mask that area, and it's the shadows that push it forward and it becomes this dominant. And it's a really interesting play on how to produce something like that, I think, and it really resonates with me.
Just on that, when I did the 4-metre piece, someone in the gallery said to me, they look like skeletons. Now, if a tree could have a skeleton or a plant could have a skeleton, I guess that's what it is, which adds to that whole impermanence thing, you know, and disappearing.
And they're so powerful. The visual is so powerful, and they have that solidity, even though they're the white and the negative. So I really love your work. So thank her again, thank Jules again, because to have an artist come and talk about their work is so special. And we're extraordinarily lucky that several of the artists who are involved in the exhibition, and there's 15, have given us the opportunity to get them in to talk about their work. So can we give her a big round of applause? And I have no doubt you've had lots of questions you might want to come up, and I'm going to actually have a look at this. This looks amazing. And I'm fascinated with that because as a ceramist, you will do little colour tiles and you'll put your tiles in if you make your ceramic colouring and your glazes. And you're not quite sure what's going to happen because you've made it by hand and you put it in and you do a tester to see what your colours are. But I love that you've done this whole book that shows you how long they last and what colours they are, and I think that's amazing. And then to go out and sun them to see how long they last in light, which we know inks are renownedly problematic for us collecting institutions, can I say. The other thing that's really lovely about this is Nicole will be on the floor tomorrow. Nicole Monacash will be talking about her piece up there at 10:30. And we had Matthew last week, so his talk is on our YouTube channel. And when you were talking about walking through the forest and that sort of impact of human activity, he talked about, and you'll see in the black piece, the black mapping that he did as, mapped like thousands and thousands of images from the top, and he was really interested in this top area, and he thought, oh, it's probably could be like these really thousands and thousands of year old ferns, and couldn't tell what it was, and it took him ages to get up there, and he found out that it was a cleared area. It was all full of latana because it was an old, they think it was probably an old banana plantation. And it was like the disappointment he had when he arrived there, but he said it's quite amazing that the land starts to come back and tries to come back, but in different ways once it's been affected. So please take the opportunity to come and talk to Jules, have a look at the exhibition. All of the artists have responded in very different ways to the project. Kevin walked on the land with all of the artists, and then the artists responded to the idea about what nature means to them, and the discussion you had about how you bring your background to what you do. It's really interesting. A lot of the artists talked about trauma and how nature helps them both recognise that trauma that they have in existence and helps them work through it as well, which you'll often see in the works. Carla's work also talks about the native mistletoe, so it was interesting when you brought up that. There's all these synergies within the exhibition, which I find really interesting. But once again, thank you so much, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.